Welcome everybody to this session of Pharma Freight video series. Today I'm here with Amy Shortman, and we're going to be talking about supply chain digitalization for the pharmaceutical supply chain. Let's hunker down and keep moving. So Amy, thank you so much for being here today with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. I was really impressed reading about your background again. We've known each other for years, but in terms of the number of different types of companies that you've been with in cold chain pharmaceuticals across the whole sort of gamut, right? So from packaging with Envirotainer, different logistics companies, BioCare and DHL, and then of course with ASC Associates, and today Overhaul as Vice President of Product Marketing. So bringing a lot of great experience to this conversation today around pharmaceutical supply chain digitalization. So just a off-the-cuff question about maybe the most interesting project at ASC Associates. What's been the most interesting project perhaps there you've worked on?
So I think that the expansion of quality processes into the logistics industry, particularly on the 2PL side, such as airlines. We did a great project with working with Virgin Atlantic Cargo on their London Heathrow facilities to be compliant to MHRA wholesale dealers authorization standards, which is basically turning an airline into the same level of standards as you would expect a company that was a wholesaler of medicines. So the expectation from a regulatory point of view is pretty high in some different parts of the world, and the UK is one of them. And it was just an amazing process to see how, forward thinking the airline was, that they really cared about their pharma products, and then embracing that sort of the process, the technology, and the processes that were required to keep medicinal products segregated from others, and just the quality control aspect. So that was one of my favorites to work on. Always great to be around aircraft as well.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you for that. So let's jump into supply chain digitalization. In our initial call, we talked about what we're going to be talking about today, and I really liked how you positioned that. A lot of companies find technology is something they can just sort of slap on like a Band-Aid, but really it's not a silver bullet, right? And rather, companies should start asking the hard questions about their supply chain. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are those hard questions, and who's asking them within the companies?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite subjects, because I've been in the industry, as you said, for 25 years, and I do remember telexes, fax machines. The technology we had at the beginning isn't the technology we have now. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. But I also understand that within the logistics, supply chain, transportation industry, processes are a really important part of what we do, and making sure that they are repeatable and scalable, and they're built with those kind of quality control methodology behind them. So I was at a recent conference where a VP of supply chain stood up and said that digitalization doesn't solve broken processes. And I love that, because it's really quite true. That's where it's not a silver bullet. Providing a technology overlay to a system where there is a fragmented or bad process is not going to improve it. So we take a step back, and with our clients, we like to understand, what is it they're trying to achieve? What's the problem statement? And then really we go on that journey with them to help them achieve their goals. And that is something that's often a phased approach in terms of digital maturity and understanding where they are in their digital transformation. Are they still using paper systems? Have they, already started integrating with a ERP system? Do they have that? And is that the same ERP system that they're using globally? So I think it's really about understanding the landscape, and for companies to have very clear set objectives on what they're trying to achieve and how they're going to measure that success.
Okay. And so for a company that's in the early stages and perhaps is largely paper-based yet, what's the initial steps? Looking at lanes, looking at moving from paper into just some data sets going into digital.
We can work with any data set. And what we do is we approach our customers, we understand what their current ecosystem and network looks like. And then we can light that up within a matter of weeks. So having a paper-based system working off Excel, which a lot of companies are, and they're using it in ways it was never intended for, but it seems to work, and we keep going back to it. That's not a problem. What we do is we'll take that, we can ingest that data into our system, and then it's really about supporting them on their digital journey. So it's taking a process that perhaps was paper-based, and then we also have technology that can be used. So a great example of this is we have an application that's on a tablet. It's called RMObot, and it replaces a process that would have been very paper-based and manual in terms of a shipment creation at origin. And when you're scanning in, maybe it's an IoT device, or you want to scan in particular barcodes, that process in the past would have been quite a manual process. We can provide technology that then feeds all of that up into the cloud and the platform, and is another one of the data points and a really quick way of shipment creation if there is not an ERP system or a TMS to pull that data from. So there are ways in which we can sort of help speed up that digital transformation with customers, but we still can ingest data in that sort of raw format template. It's just really about showing them where they are, lighting up the visibility of their supply chain and their shipments in transit, and then looking to how we can improve and support them on that journey as they go through. And some companies are more they're more ambitious than others. Other ones want to kind of like start with that process, see what visibility they have, actually understand what's really happening in their supply chain, and look at a continuous improvement process of everything. And I think that's what we've seen. There's a mixture of ways in which people are setting up and creating shipments, or ways in which they are using different 3PLs to monitor and manage those shipments as well. And what we do is really provide a kind of standardized layer over that to manage the risk and visibility, irrespective of how we've created that shipment or who they're using.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that you call it a bot? For the upload from paper from Excel into the Overhaul system.
Mm-hmm. Sorry,
did you call it a bot? What is the mechanism?
the RMObot, yeah. So it's an application. It's part of our solution suite. An application that is on a tablet. That tablet is secured to that location, and it's just another way our customers, because we want to be as flexible as possible. So it's like, tell us what you have. Yes, we can bring in Excel. Yes, we can bring in an email. We've also got this technology that if you're scanning, IoT devices for monitoring, then we can bring that in and set that shipment up, and that can be the way in which you create shipments. We also have a platform they can go into, create it, or we can feed off API integrations to pull that data from an enterprise resource planning system or a transport management system. So all of those different ways kind of allows us to be very flexible and agile. So our risk management officer bot is our application that sits on a tablet that's secured to that location, so it can't be taken away. And if it is taken out of that geofence, all of the information is wiped. So it's that added layer of security, but really allows somebody to replace that manual process of having to document and create that shipment information in a warehouse on a dock door, and gives them a digital way of doing it. So we've thought of kind of everything in terms of, we want to be as flexible, and we want to be able to use what you've got. And it might be in one location, somebody does have an ERP system we can pull from, but maybe they're using a supplier that doesn't match up to their same system. So that allows us to pop in our technology and to work with them so that all of that information is then visible within the cloud, within our platform.
Okay. So say a pharmaceutical company is at the beginning of this journey, and you're working with them in whatever mechanism, through the risk management bot or the API, however that data is getting it. What's best practice in your opinion in terms of legacy data? Mm-hmm. Is that something that you would advise a company, hey, we're moving to digital, we're going to bring in this sort of data sets, whether it's from the warehouse or from the IoT devices, as you said. Is it current data? Or do you bring in X amount of legacy data as well?
Yeah, I mean, historical data has huge value to companies as well. We have a lot of historical data, and that's really how machine learning is leveraging that historical data and understanding what patterns there are out there within the supply chain, within our customer supply chain as well. And that becomes part of trend analysis. So if customers have any historical data, then that's really valuable. If it is on Excel spreadsheets, that's something we can ingest into our system as well. And then it's really kind of leveraging historical data that we have within our platform. And as you can imagine, we're connecting with billions of different data points and pulling that in to really have an understanding of flows and whether our supply chain risks, bottlenecks, issues, and that can be in real time. But when you look at that trend analysis, we know that historically it's very busy around kind of the lead up to Black Friday in the US, and then you have kind of the Bordeaux wines that come out at a certain time of the year. That sort of thing, you know, when you actually look and can visualize that on data, and then you can plan and manage your supply chain around knowing what could happen, that's really where the risk management principles come in. And that's what our system intelligently recognizes the shipment moving through a real-time transportation flow. But also when you start overlaying what could happen, that's where you build up a risk profile, which can really help that kind of lane risk assessment and understanding how robust that particular shipment needs to be in terms of either maybe it's temperature monitoring from a farmer point of view, or from a theft point of view as well, where those risks could be.
Mm-hmm. So Amy, in a recent article, you talked about lack of standardization across supply chains and using ocean freight ordering processes as an example of being fragmented and paper email based. What then if quite a high volume shipments go via ocean? Leave that big gap alone and focus elsewhere, or what would be your advice there?
Yeah, so leading on from the kind of previous question, I think that we have different ways to connect data, and I think to support customers on their digital transformation journey. When we're talking about a shipper who has multiple different third-party logistics providers they're potentially working with, and then they're outsourcing, whether it's the air, the ocean, or perhaps even the trucking component of that, it starts to be, from a compliance point of view, for medicinal products, that sort of due diligence of making sure that everyone within the supply chain is working to certain standards. And I think what supply chain visibility solutions and risk management solutions overlay is that making sure that that's happening each and every time. So a shipper would take responsibility of auditing their supply chain partners. They would go out to those 3 or 4 different 3PLs they're working with. And then they would ask, who are you subcontracting your flights to? Yes, we're going to work with these airlines. And then it would be which trucking companies are you working with? So they'll do that perhaps once a year in terms of their due diligence and to comply with good distribution practice. And then really what technology is enabling is that shipper to have peace of mind that those standards are being adhered to each and every time. So in effect, it's like a real-time auditing of their supply chain. And when there are any non-conformances against the set SOPs of what's been agreed, an example of that would be, a temperature excursion en route. When you have that data in real time, you can put that shipment back into compliance a lot quicker by alerting the stakeholders that there's a problem. And so really being able to take action has multiple benefits downstream, because the receiving company, if it's medicinal products and there's a qualified person waiting to release those products to market, they're getting that insight before the shipments arrive that so far everything's good and it's remained within its temperature profile. And then if there are any issues, it's going to be taken back into compliance as soon as possible. So they've got that information to be able to make the decisions on, yes, we might need to take this and do further testing, or that material is good to go and good to be pushed out. I think what a lot of the kind of CAPA investigations, and the average cost of a CAPA investigation has been cited between kind of $3,000 and $5,000. So eliminating that retrospective investigation of something went outside of temperature, what was it, who was to blame, let's go back and go through that chain of custody of the supply chain. You're eliminating those costs for companies because you're actually predicting and managing that proactively in real time. So that has huge benefits. I think in terms of, when we think of multimodal shipments, whether it's air, whether it's ocean, road, we've got a lot of different stakeholders that the shipment is passing through, and making sure that you have visibility of those handover of chain of custody is really important. But having that oversight of globally all of your shipments is great. But what you're really looking for is managing by exception and only being alerted to when there's a problem. And then it's about making sure those that escalation path that you'd have in your SOP, that those stakeholders who can get to the product, who can put that product back into compliance, are alerted and told as soon as possible. And technology enables to put our customers back in control of each and every shipment every single day, and to manage those non-conformances with peace of mind that everything else is going okay.
Okay, great. Just jumping over to data sharing, and as you've been explaining, working with different stakeholders is part and part of the supply chain. But data sharing, is inevitable, as demonstrated by the technology like blockchain and the metaverse and other industries, especially by consumers and patients themselves, right? So why and how is there still a reluctance to share data in pharma, and how do you see this evolving?
Yeah, I mean, data is an interesting one because inherently data is just zeros and ones. It doesn't hold any value. It's when you contextualize that data and you give it meaning that it actually becomes something where you can take action on it and or provide insights for strategic or tactical benefits. So I think that cybersecurity is a huge risk for companies, and we have seen a lot of recent phishing scams that have penetrated businesses and caused a lot of problems. So there is always that fear, I think, to work with companies that have good cybersecurity processes and standards, and their own technology is working to those best-in-class standards, is really critical. And then I think we have to understand that to collaborate, we're going to need to share data. And our business is about aggregating data, so that's really critical for us. We don't have a problem with companies who are sharing data. It's normally led by a need and a business need and a requirement, and as long as that's outlined and that there are relevant contracts in place, API and EDI integrations happen all the time. There's a lot of transition of data. So I think that that's something that's set to continue. We are seeing a huge expanse of partnerships within the supply chain and logistics industry at the moment, because I think we're understanding that we do need those partnerships. We do need to connect the ecosystem for the pharmaceutical industry. They demand it. They're starting to share more data with each other as well. There's a lot of great projects where pharma companies have realized that, they're all experiencing some of the same pain points and some of the same issues. And so for them to actually kind of connect and share data and work on these projects. So I think we've gone through a sort of a level of maturity and, holding on to data and it being mine and it's powerful, and actually realizing that there is more value in sharing that data and being open to work with other suppliers. A great example is that, a 3PL may have their own track and trace system. They might have milestones. They might be able to, share with a pharmaceutical company, log into this platform and see where your shipments are. You may also have, packaging that you can provide real-time data on. And that's, again, another platform that has value. But actually being able to share those and pull that data together for the shipper actually does hold more value, because they may not just be using your packaging, they may be using other packaging providers as well. So for them, it's really kind of reaching out into the partners that they're working with and asking them to be open with sharing that data, because the value for them is really building that larger ecosystem. So they don't have to swivel chair and look at 100 different platforms. They're actually getting all of that in a single unified view. I think we're collaborating more as an industry. I see that the risk and the fear factor there is about making sure that data is safe, it's immutable, it can't be tampered with. I think that some of the technologies, we had a big wave of blockchain being discussed, and that was really about creating immutable data that can't be tampered with. And that's particularly important when we're talking about things like temperature. But there's a lot of other security standards out there, and things like CFR 21, the FDA requirements for data as well, and electronic signatures for release of products to market and making sure they've been kept in temperature. So I think that the standards that we have support that as well. And I think that, we will see a lot more collaboration over the next 10 years.
It's moving in the right direction.
I think so, yes.
Good. So at an organizational level, what are pharma companies perhaps missing if their data strategy is stalled? Or in other words, how have you worked with pharma companies maybe on supporting change management practices?
Change, whenever we're embracing new technology, change is hard. And I think I know that because I've just changed from working with old Outlook to new Outlook. And even I found that a personal challenge. So it is hard for us as humans to embrace technology. I think what's really important is understanding what's in it for them, what's in it for the company. And as I said right at the beginning, having those kind of clear objectives. Change for change's sake isn't very good, but when there are strategic and value-driven outcomes, then it becomes something that people can get behind as well. So I think that one of the areas that our industry within pharma logistics has really benefited from is that collaboration of companies all improving their technology at the same time. So we're leveraging the ability to tap into telemetry, vehicles, electronic logging devices. It might be carrier integration or a 3PL. It could be packaging company as well. So that doesn't happen on its own. It's actually everyone being innovative within their own organizations, and then providing that technology so we can connect those ecosystems together. And I think this is really going to benefit pharma companies from a point of view of traceability of audit trail, from compliance standards, making sure products are safe and secure for patients, and eliminating any unnecessary waste through things like temperature excursions, and being proactive on supply chain flows and understanding when there are upstream impacts or supply chain disruptions, how that could impact downstream as well. So any information we have on, port congestion or delays, if something's being sent via ocean freight, and that could be a weather event, it may be port congestion, it might be traffic. All of that, those bits of information can, when they're combined, can be really powerful in terms of making sure manufacturers have that continuity of supply. So I think that we are perhaps a little bit further behind than other industries within the pharma industry, but I think that the intent is very much there. And I've seen that big trend in the last couple of years, that we've moved on from talking about sort of good distribution practice and supply chain security to then sort of like how you can, we need to be compliant, we need to kind of adhere to those standards, but now it's like how we can leverage technology to get there, and then also using technology to really identify what's happening in the supply chain, all of the way down to sustainability. How is a driver driving? Are they braking harshly? How does that impact fuel consumption? And then what's the impact for CO2 emissions? So I think we'll start to see that penetrate further into more granular levels that will eventually help companies in a lot of the goals that they have to deliver patients medicines that are safe and effective, but also some of the areas that they have from a corporate responsibility point of view.
Let's talk about the innovation curve that some people call the diffusion curve of innovation. Where do you see pharma sort of supply chain in terms of digitalization initiatives on that curve?
I would say at the moment, from my experience, in the early adopter phase, there's a few reasons for that. I think that serialization of medicines is something that we've, over the last, I suppose, just 5 years, we've been working on how we can provide serialization and traceability down to a product level or medicine level. I think that, other industries have been doing that for the past 15, 20 years. So I think that is one of the reasons why pop-ups in the early adopter phase the pharma industry has always been very risk-based and very evidence-based as well. So I think that might be some of the reasons for making sure that the processes, they're just a little bit more perhaps diligent and risk averse than perhaps other industries are at moving forward. But what I have seen is that in terms of supply chain visibility technology, that there has been an interest. Some people have had bad experiences and entered into that trough of disillusionment when embracing new technology. And I think part of the reasons for that is what we've seen. They've looked at the market landscape and assumed that supply chain visibility, all companies are very similar. And I think that them setting clear objectives as to what it is they want, are they looking for visibility? Are they looking for a company that's going to provide just predictive ETA or connect to vehicles? Or are they looking for product level tracking? Are they looking for risk management? Are they looking for asset and fleet utilization? There's a lot of different areas within that. And then being able to take customers on that journey is a real privilege, and it's a real part of them choosing the right vendors to work with as well, because embracing technology does involve that change. We're dealing with people, we're not dealing with technology. So you're trying to get people, and we have a very diverse workforce. Some have been working with technology, and the millennials and the younger generation are very au fait. And I am sweeping generalization here based upon myself. Whereas us who grew up with, sending off our photographs to get printed, we have adapted to using some of these technologies. When I first started out, we were using a typewriter to type certain documents. So, that curve and that expectation does involve thinking about how people are going to embrace and use technology as well. So I think that we are heading towards that sort of early majority. Some people started out, 6 years ago, we had customers that were very passionate about working and embracing technology, and they were the early adopters. And what we found was that they hugely benefited from having that supply chain visibility when we entered into any period of disruption, be that volcanic ash cloud or the recent COVID disruption that we've had as well. So they knew where their shipments were, they had that visibility, they had invested, and the benefit of that was that they had real insight into their supply chain flows, upstream, downstream, inbound, outbound, and that they could manage their customers' expectations and communication because they had that insight.
Amy, regarding healthcare specific use cases in ramping up digitalization, what are some examples there that are useful to glean on?
So I think what's interesting so healthcare and life sciences does cover a huge spectrum. We have customers who are working on the personalized medicines, CAR T therapies, cell and gene therapies, and with them really it's about that risk management of in-transit products from a time and temperature sensitive point of view. So these are medicines that are going to be, they're actually taken from the patient. There's a process that's done on their own bodily fluids, and then it's placed back into them in the most simplistic terms. So that can't be replaced. And in that process, you have a patient that's waiting very sensitive, life-saving treatment. And it's the same with kind of clinical trial logistics and those kind of things of intrinsic value, to an actual commercial value of a vials or a box of blood. It has no commercial value, but the value to that trial and the value to the progression of developing medicines is huge. So where there are those kind of products, they're really looking at that risk, anything that could happen to their product, and eliminating that risk from their supply chain. And that's where I think that, visibility and having insight. We had a great example of a CAR T therapy shipment that we got notification that there wasn't actually going to travel on that flight. Having that in real time is just so valuable to be able to tell the stakeholder, this doesn't look like it's going to go onto that shipment. We can see where it is. We know where that flight is. And then they can make those decisions to get that on another flight and to get to the patient within a very short time span. So time and temperature sensitive shipments are really kind of vital. Then you've got the kind of over-the-counter, wholesalers of medicines who are looking really at providing customers with very predictive ETAs on when those shipments are going to be arriving. And it's customer service driven for them. It's about they've got somebody who's waiting for those medicines to sell. And they want to make sure that communication is very streamlined and is very proactive as well. So we then have things like the vaccines deliveries that a lot of companies were involved in. You know, we actually developed new technology for people with no logistics or pharmaceutical kind of logistics experience to scan the outside of one of the boxes arriving with vaccines. And this might be in sports halls or any of the places that they did these mass vaccine delivery programs, and to be able to scan an external barcode on their mobile phone just through downloading an app and getting a verification that that product was safe and kept at the right temperature, added that additional layer of quality compliance to somebody who wasn't perhaps, used to going in and logging into a system and seeing and downloading temperature reports as well. So that technology can be used to really kind of go all of the way from raw materials down to the last mile and supporting products being delivered to the patient and making sure they are at the right temperature. We also want to make sure they're at the right time and that they're delivered, and that everybody within that supply chain has peace of mind that they're safe and effective for use.
So as we see, as you say, from raw materials through to patient, right, in the extreme gamut of everybody involved, all the stakeholders involved, and as people and companies innovate together, maybe on this innovation curve, I think that's the idea, right? It picks up as the mass of people and mass of companies continue to collaborate and innovate. So.
Well, consumers, I mean, we have expectations, and I think that really drives it. So the B2C world is that, I order something, I know exactly where it is, I can see it coming in, I know if it's going to be late. And we've got so used to that, of being able to actually get real-time tracking of products that are coming in, that when we don't hear of anything, or we do hear there's going to be, or we have to, phone somebody up and find out there's a delay, we're quite frustrated with that. And so we consumers are changing the way in which companies are operating, and then we're taking that into our work life, and particularly within the logistics industry, and we're expecting that same level of that kind of e-commerce visibility within our supply chain. And there's no reason why we can't have it. It's just a question of embracing technology. So I think that's quite exciting. But there is also within the pharma more of a direct to patient change that's happening. The delivering medicines to a patient's home, as opposed to them having to go to a pharmacy to collect those medicines as well. We're going to see a big shift in the way medicines are going to be delivered as well. And the expectations of consumers will drive a lot of those shifts as well. So we need to be agile in the fact that to get a box of medicines, and they could be temperature controlled, delivered to a patient, that's really kind of a last mile challenge, and making sure that they're receiving products that have been kept in the right conditions as well. So I think there's going to be some big shifts in terms of consumer expectations, our expectations, and technology will help deliver a more streamlined and a better experience from a customer point of view. And then for us working in the logistics industry, really that sort of peace of mind that the majority of the stuff we don't need to know about. I don't need alerts for 3 million shipments that are happening in a year. What I want to know is those 5 shipments that could be at risk, that could impact my customer or could impact the patient. And that's where I can focus my attention. And I think technology is enabling humans to really add value where they can, and it's taking away a lot of the noise. And so that's a great thing. So we can really focus on delivering great customer service and using our human skills, and leaving technology to automate and automatically pick up any issues and feed those to us, whilst the rest of it, we've just got peace of mind that everything's happening as it should.
But as you say, maybe it's not looking at all, 3 million or 3,000 shipments a year. It's as you said earlier in this conversation, it's taking sort of one step at a time and identifying those most immediate opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So jumping back to something else in the beginning of our conversation on air freight, skipping over to that topic, what are your sort of first reactions to the Pegasus ULD? How do you see that fulfilling needs in the high value shipping of pharma products?
Yeah, so I any technology or any solution that provides real-time ability to feed that data to the end user for somebody to make it a decision and know that product has been shipped in a safe and compliant way is great. And I think that's part of our collaboration. And I love seeing any companies develop and innovate new technology. It enables us as a company, we can connect and we can pull in that data for our customers to see. They may be using other packaging and they might be using, the Pegasus ULD as well. And that really gives them a very holistic picture and it is kind of cleansing that data and bringing it in. But I think that what's interesting about any reusable type of packaging is that companies are much more focused on sustainability. It is a big trend at the moment, the corporate responsibility companies have, and then selecting sustainable packaging is key. We also see that sort of ability for management of the return logistics and the fact that it's lighter and that's going to have an impact on fuel consumption. All of those things really are very good for the future of our planet and then the future of our industry as well. So it's brilliant to see companies innovate. We certainly, love working with our connected partners as well. So it's any technology that has an API that can connect to that enables it to push and to pull data into other systems. That innovation is, I think, what we need as an industry going forward. So it's brilliant to see that SONOCO have, developed a solution that protects the products, is sustainable, and that also is innovative and going to be able to be connected to in the ecosystem for the benefit of the pharma industry.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. So that'll be the topic of our next conversation, sustainability.
Okay, cool.
Another day.
Yeah, that's another one of my favorite topics at the moment, because I think that we have a huge responsibility, and I think as an industry we are a big impact on environmental things. So with that, it's about understanding what the impact is and then how we can balance that out, how we can offset that. But there are so many little things, route planning, optimization, driver behavior that has an impact on it, that they are achievable as well. So another very exciting thing, data really provides evidence of that. So very happy to talk about that anytime in the future.
Excellent. Sounds good. So a couple quick last questions. They're real quick ones. They're just for fun. I like to call it the speed round. Okay. So they're just off the cuff, one answer things. So what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Brown bread ice cream.
Brown bread?
My grandfather was head chef of Trinity College, the University of Cambridge. And it's a delicious one with kind of, I think it's Cointreau, orange liqueur, and then little bits of toasted brown bread in it. Absolutely delicious.
That is a new one. That's a new one. Excellent. Okay. So for a holiday, beach, city, mountain, or other?
Mountain, I think. Yes, I like getting away in the mountain. Beaches are nice conceptually, but there's a lot of sand, and I don't really like things swimming in. So yeah, I'm not good at sharing the sea.
So on a mountain, warm or cold?
Oh, I think warm. I think a nice kind of Austrian mountain in the summertime with the flowers. I've been skiing a few times and it's a lot of effort. So I think a nice. I'm thinking an outdoor bar, beer garden, mountain would be good. Yeah.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Okay. One last question. Let's see. Iron, steam, or none of the above?
I don't mind ironing. I would use a steam as well. I'm actually quite fussy about how things are. So my husband does do a lot of the ironing, but there's a few things that I definitely will save for me to do. I don't mind. I'll stick on some telly and watch it, but I wouldn't go as far as things like bed sheets. And yeah, there's a limit, but
That's where you draw the line.
exactly, yeah.
Cool. Well, Amy, thank you so much for your time today. It's much appreciated. Your insights, your background, best wishes at Overhaul. We really look forward to seeing the developments as you make them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.